She used to wake up at exactly 4 a.m. every single day. Not once, not twice, but for years. No alarm, no reason, just her body, screaming for something she couldn't understand. At first, she thought it was just age. Maybe it's normal in old age, she'd whisper to herself. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The pain, the tension, the restlessness, it was all building up to a truth no doctor could see. Until one day, she discovered the real reason. And from that day on, she never woke up in pain again. Stay with me, because this might be your story too. For years, she didn't need a clock. Every morning, like clockwork, her eyes opened at 4 a.m. sharp. Not 3:58, not 4:02, always 4 a.m. It was as if something inside her was on a secret schedule. At first, she thought it was just her bladder or a strange dream pulling her out of sleep. But after months, then years, of this strange wake-up call, she began to feel like something wasn't right. Especially at her age, when sleep becomes precious. The nights became shorter, the mornings heavier. She started to dread going to bed, knowing 4 a.m. would come again. What bothered her most wasn't just waking up early. It was the silence. That cold, still kind of silence that presses on your chest. She'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring into the dark, wondering why her body betrayed her every morning. She wasn't sad, but something felt off. Her energy during the day dropped. Her bones ached. Her mind became foggier than usual. Friends said it was just part of getting older. But she had a feeling, deep in her gut, that this wasn't just aging. Something else was trying to talk to her, and it was using 4 a.m. to do it. Every time she tried to push through the day after waking up so early, it felt like she was dragging her feet through wet sand. Simple tasks like watering the plants or making breakfast became exhausting. Her neighbor, a cheerful woman in her 70s, would often ask, "Did you sleep well?" And every time, she'd lie. "Yes, thank you." Because how do you explain to someone that you keep waking up at 4 a.m. for no reason, and that no one believes it's a problem? That kind of struggle is lonely, especially in old age, when energy becomes a luxury and sleep is no longer guaranteed. She tried everything that seemed to work for others. Herbal teas, no electronics at night, lavender on the pillow, soft music before sleep. Some nights she'd fall asleep faster, but still, 4 a.m. came like an uninvited guest. That time of the morning began to feel cursed. It wasn't insomnia, because she could fall asleep just fine. But staying asleep? That became her battle. And when you're already navigating the challenges of senior health, broken sleep can feel like another crack in the foundation. Something was wrong, but what? By the 6th month of these early awakenings, her health started to reflect the wear and tear. Her blood pressure shifted. Her appetite changed. Her joints were stiffer. But the worst part? The emotional toll. She became more irritable with loved ones, more withdrawn in social settings. That's when she started to wonder, is this just old age creeping in, or is my body trying to say something more? It's in those quiet, early hours, when even the birds aren't awake yet, that our minds wander into places we often avoid. And hers kept returning to one haunting question. Why 4 a.m.? That's when the curiosity turned into a mission. She started writing down what she ate before bed, how she felt emotionally, how her room smelled, what her last thought was before sleep. She became a quiet investigator of her own life. And even though the mystery wasn't solved yet, something had shifted. The frustration became fuel. She was no longer a passive victim of early mornings. She was searching, determined to crack the code her own body seemed to be sending. And it wouldn't be long before subtle clues would begin to surface. She didn't just wake up at 4 a.m. She woke up feeling off. At first, it was subtle. A slight stiffness in her back. A strange warmth in her chest. Sometimes her hands tingled. Other times her heart would race for no reason at all. There were even nights when she'd wake with her pajamas damp from sweat, as if her body had run a marathon in her sleep. She chalked it up to menopause flashbacks or maybe just stress. But the pattern was too precise to ignore. These weren't random. These symptoms were linked to that same eerie hour every single day. Over time, the discomfort became predictable. She'd wake up with her jaw clenched, her thoughts racing before her feet even touched the floor. Her breathing felt shallow, her chest tight, not enough to panic, but enough to feel trapped in her own skin. Some mornings, a dull ache would settle in her shoulders or lower back, as if she'd been sleeping on rocks. It was hard to describe, and even harder to explain to her doctor, especially when, during the day, the symptoms faded, almost like they'd never existed. That made her feel even more confused and alone. One morning, she sat up in bed and whispered to herself, "Something's wrong with me." But deep down, she knew her instincts were working. This wasn't just aging. This wasn't just a bad mattress or a restless mind. These were early whispers of imbalance, things the body tries to say when words fail. She started thinking about other elderly women she knew. Her cousin had once described feeling flushed and wired at odd hours. A friend from church mentioned nightly aches she could never explain. Could they all be experiencing something more common, but silently? The sad truth is, many elderly ignore these signs. They blame the weather, the food, their age. And sure, old age brings changes, but not every change should be accepted as normal, especially when they interrupt your sleep and steal your peace. That's why senior health demands attention to the quiet details, the things that don't show up on tests, but show up in how you feel when no one's watching. She began journaling every sensation, even if it seemed silly. That small act of tracking brought her clarity she never got from any blood test. And when she started comparing her notes over weeks, a strange pattern emerged. It wasn't just the time she woke up, it was how she felt before and after. The anxiety, the body tension, the heat flashes, all signs of something deeper, perhaps hormonal, emotional, or even environmental. That realization made her pause. If her body was crying out at 4 a.m., then maybe the real cause wasn't inside her, but around her. That thought opened a door in her mind. Maybe the root wasn't medical. Maybe it was habitual. By then, she was done being brushed off. "It's just aging" was no longer an acceptable answer. She needed to go beyond routine checkups. She wanted someone who saw beyond symptoms. Someone who believed that longevity wasn't just about living longer, but living clearer. So, she made a bold move. She booked a consultation with a specialist in elderly wellness and longevity, someone who didn't look at old age as a downhill slide, but as a chance to decode the body's messages. And that visit would change everything. She walked into the clinic with a notebook full of symptoms and a heart full of hope. For the first time in years, she wasn't there just for blood work or prescriptions. She came with questions. Big ones. Why 4 a.m.? Why these symptoms? What was she missing? The doctor, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s, didn't laugh. She listened. Carefully. She asked about her habits, her dinners, the lighting in her room, her worries, her routines. Not once did she interrupt. That alone felt like therapy. The specialist introduced her to a new concept, biorhythmic disruption. Your body has its own clock, she explained. When it gets triggered by food, stress, hormones, or even light, it can break its rhythm. That idea struck her. Could her 4 a.m. wake-up call be her body trying to get back on track? The doctor asked questions no one else ever had. What did she eat at night? How often did she worry in silence? Was she sleeping in total darkness? It felt like they were finally looking under the hood instead of just polishing the surface. She left the consultation feeling two things: empowered and a little scared. Empowered because someone had finally taken her seriously. Scared because it meant she had to change. And change, especially in old age, isn't easy. But she was tired of waking up to pain, tired of blaming it on her age. That night, she sat at the kitchen table and reviewed everything she'd learned. It wasn't just about taking a pill or meditating. It was about breaking habits that had become invisible but harmful. She began experimenting with simple changes. No sugar after 6 p.m., a warm foot soak before bed, turning off the hallway light that bled into her bedroom. She even started wearing a sleep mask, something she used to laugh at. And you know what? That night she still woke up at 4 a.m., but felt different. Calmer, less tense, as if her body noticed the effort and was beginning to respond. That tiny shift gave her the motivation to keep going. Healing, she realized, wasn't instant, but it was possible. The following weeks became a journey of rediscovery. She tried herbal infusions, like valerian root and lemon balm. She stopped scrolling through her phone at night. Instead, she listened to audiobooks like The Power of Now or Ageless Soul, stories that soothed her heart instead of overstimulating her brain. Every evening became a ritual, not a routine. And slowly, the 4 a.m. awakenings began to lose their power. They still happened, but with less fear, less pain. She was taking her body back, one habit at a time. But the biggest surprise was still ahead. As she kept adjusting and tracking, a hidden culprit slowly came into view. Something small, seemingly innocent, but powerful enough to throw her whole system off balance night after night. And when she uncovered this silent villain, everything began to make sense. It wasn't a disease. It wasn't age. And it definitely wasn't all in her head. The culprit was something she did every single night without question. A seemingly innocent cup of tea, her beloved peppermint infusion, was the hidden villain. But it's herbal, she argued. It's supposed to relax me. That's when the specialist explained. Peppermint is stimulating for some elderly people. It can trigger gastric activity and even elevate nighttime cortisol. In other words, her relaxing tea was keeping her nervous system on high alert. Who would have thought? This realization opened her eyes. The smallest habits, especially during old age, can either protect your longevity or quietly sabotage it. She started re-examining everything in her evening ritual. The soft music she played? Too upbeat. The late evening news? Emotionally triggering. Even her bedroom temperature, just a bit too warm, was enough to disrupt her deep sleep cycles. Senior health, she discovered, isn't about radical change. It's about strategic simplicity. Small details matter more than ever. And unfortunately, nobody teaches us how powerful these little choices can be. The doctor called it environmental noise. Things that don't make a sound, but still speak loudly to your body. Light pollution, hidden caffeine in decaf teas, overstimulating conversations before bed, and perhaps the biggest one, late-night snacking. That was her second enemy. Her favorite toast with honey, eaten at 9:30 p.m. like a sacred ritual, was spiking her insulin and subtly waking her up hours later. The human body, especially in old age, can't afford those midnight sugar crashes. That revelation stunned her. Her comfort food was stealing her rest. She replaced that snack with something different. Half a banana with a pinch of cinnamon and warm almond milk. Not a dramatic shift, but enough to calm her nervous system rather than confuse it. She also removed the scented candles that she thought were helping. Turns out, synthetic lavender was triggering mild allergic reactions and causing congestion. One by one, she eliminated her suspects. Each change felt like a small betrayal of comfort, but a gift to her well-being. And her body began to thank her for it. Subtly, gradually. What amazed her most wasn't just how these things affected her sleep, but how they were linked to her early morning symptoms. The 4 a.m. wake-ups weren't random. They were timed reactions. Her body wasn't failing, it was fighting back, warning her, giving her signals in the only language it had left. Pain, restlessness, heat. She began to respect those symptoms not as enemies, but as messages. And once she started listening to them without fear, something powerful began to shift in her entire relationship with aging. And then came the moment that changed everything. One night, after following her new routine, she fell asleep at 10 p.m. and woke up at 6:15 a.m. No alarm, no pain, just silence and sunlight. Her eyes filled with tears, not because of sadness, but because of relief. It wasn't a miracle. It was awareness. Her body, for the first time in years, rested without interruption. And this was only the beginning. From that day forward, everything shifted. Not overnight, of course, but gradually, steadily, like the rising sun. She felt more grounded when she woke up. No rush, no anxiety, no pain humming in her bones. Her mornings started with a quiet cup of warm water and a walk in the garden instead of frustration and fog. What used to feel like a punishment, sleep, became her healing sanctuary. The changes she made weren't complicated. They were intentional, and that intention made all the difference in her longevity journey. She also started reading again, something she hadn't done in years. Books like Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker and The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington helped her understand the science behind her transformation. But more than that, they gave her the confidence to trust her instincts. She wasn't crazy or just aging. She was aware. That sense of empowerment is priceless, especially in old age, when people often stop listening to their bodies, or worse, stop believing in their ability to heal. With better sleep came better days. Her memory sharpened. Her energy returned. Her joints didn't ache as much. Even her sense of humor, once dulled by fatigue, started to sparkle again. Friends noticed. "You look different," they'd say. "Happier." And she was. Because there's a certain kind of joy that comes from relief. From no longer dreading the night. From waking up knowing your body isn't broken. It's just been misunderstood for far too long. That's a kind of healing that no prescription can give. She didn't keep the secret to herself. At her next community gathering, she shared her story. Not in a preachy way, but with warmth, honesty, and a gentle smile. "If you wake up at 4 a.m., she said, don't ignore it. That's your body knocking." Some nodded. Some wept. Because many elderly feel these things, but rarely talk about them. There's a strange silence around senior health, especially when symptoms don't fit into neat boxes. Her story gave others permission to be curious, to investigate, to hope. What made her story even more powerful was how simple her changes were. No expensive supplements. No extreme diets. No high-tech devices. Just honest attention to her environment, her habits, and her own emotional state. She kept a small journal on her nightstand with the title, What My Body Is Saying. That little book became her roadmap to a more peaceful life. It wasn't just about better sleep anymore. It was about reclaiming trust in her body during old age. That's real longevity. But even after all that progress, one thought stayed with her. What if others are going through the same thing and have no idea? That became her new mission, not just to sleep well, but to help others wake up to their own hidden signals. She often wondered, what if I had ignored the signs? What if I just kept waking up at 4 a.m. and blamed it on old age? That thought gave her chills, because the truth is, most elderly people do exactly that. They accept the discomfort, the anxiety, the broken sleep as part of the natural process of aging. But now she knew better. And once you know better, you can't unknow it. So she made it her mission to share what she discovered, not to show off, but to wake others up, figuratively and literally. She began with her closest friends. "Do you ever wake up at the same time every night?" she'd ask. At first, they'd laugh it off. But then, one by one, they started sharing. "Actually, yes. Around 3:45. Or, I always feel hot and restless at 5 a.m. The pattern was there, but no one had dared to investigate it. Not deeply. That's the hidden danger of old age. People get used to suffering. They normalize exhaustion. They accept tension as just life now. But it doesn't have to be that way. She invited her friends to do small experiments. No sugar after 7 p.m. Sleeping with blackout curtains. Writing down what time they woke up and how they felt. She didn't preach, she guided. Gently. And the results were incredible. One friend said she slept through the night for the first time in a decade. Another said his morning joint pain was cut in half. These weren't miracle cures. They were proof that the body still responds, even in old age. Especially in old age, when attention to detail becomes the most powerful medicine. She began calling it her wake-up circle, a group of seniors who refused to sleepwalk through their symptoms anymore. They met every 2 weeks, over chamomile tea, caffeine-free this time, and shared discoveries. Some started turning off their Wi-Fi at night. Others swapped crime shows for calming music. And many simply began treating their bedtime as sacred again, not just something to survive, but something to prepare for. That's when she realized, senior health isn't just a checklist. It's a mindset, a daily relationship with your own well-being. To her, longevity wasn't about reaching 90 or 100. It was about waking up pain-free, laughing more, being fully present. She often told people, you don't have to suffer in silence. Your body speaks. Your sleep is a message. Don't ignore it. And the beautiful part? People listened. Because when wisdom comes wrapped in empathy, it doesn't feel like advice. It feels like permission. Permission to hope. Permission to change. Permission to thrive, even after 70. So now, she offers you the same invitation. If you've been waking up at 4 a.m., if your body's been sending signals no one else understands, maybe it's time to listen, just like she did. And maybe, just maybe, your best mornings are still ahead of you. Now that you know what's possible, are you really going to keep ignoring those 4 a.m. wake-ups? What if that pain, that tight chest, that strange burst of anxiety isn't just old age? What if it's your body asking you to change? Think about it. How many more mornings will you spend tired, frustrated, and confused when the answers might be sitting in your habits, your room, your plate? This isn't about fear, it's about freedom. The freedom to age wisely. The freedom to sleep deeply. The freedom to take back control of your health in ways that no pill ever taught you. Are you willing to try something different tonight? Just one small shift? Like turning off the news before bed, sipping calming tea instead of stimulating herbs, or simply listening to your body instead of silencing it. And tell me, have you ever really stopped to ask yourself what your body might be saying in the silence of the early morning? Are you paying attention, or just brushing it off like everyone else? What would happen if you chose to investigate instead of ignore? How much longer do you want to carry this silent weight when lightness is within reach? You've heard her story, and now it's your turn. Take one idea from this video and apply it tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. Then come back here and tell us what changed. Because stories like hers aren't rare, they're just rarely told. And your story might be the next one that inspires someone to finally sleep through the night. If you want to keep learning how to feel better, age stronger, and live with purpose, even past 70, then don't leave without subscribing to this channel. Hit that bell so you never miss a video that could change your life. You've made it this far. Now let's go even further. Together.